Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of Access Vikings. I'm Emily Leiker. I'm joined by my Minnesota Star Tribune colleagues, Ben Goessling and Andrew Krammer, as always, but also today by Vikings General Manager Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Kwesi, thanks for coming on to chat with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. I just got off the field. Another great day of practice. This time of year, it's, obviously we're not playing 11 on 11, but you get to see young players take steps. You get to see guys build their culture, come together as teammates. So anytime we get to get out there on the grass and be around football, it's a great day for me.
Yeah, Kwesi, obviously the big news for you in the last couple of weeks here is the contract extension is done. Congratulations on that. What is it like for you to finally have that in place and know that you're going to be in this job for a long time? I know you said this wasn't something that you had, kind of let consume your thoughts, but to know that that is done, how does that feel for you just as a validation of the job you've done to this point?
I think, as I said, I really didn't think about it that much, and maybe I should have a little bit more. But I was just trying to live my life. What am I going to do tomorrow? And is that going to change what I was going to do tomorrow? No, I'm going to wake up along with Kev and everybody else in this building and try and chase our goals. But I would say for everybody else around me, my family, people like that, where they maybe don't have the same steely demeanor about these things, I think it was a relief, and they wanted it for me. They obviously see up close what these jobs take sacrifice wise and how much we put into it. And they're obviously very Team Kwesi oriented. So a lot of happiness there, but I always approach it from just a state of gratitude. You think back on your life and all the moments where, if one thing had been different, maybe I don't even get the job in San Francisco, and maybe I don't meet Andrew Barry, and then maybe I don't get the job in Minnesota. Maybe this thing goes wrong and we don't get the chance to continue on. So just the ability to continue on and approach of all our goals, and they're all still out in front of us. Nothing's changed. The goal of this job for me was not to earn a contract extension. It was to bring the franchise their first championships. And this obviously will allow us more time to do so, but still wired, incredibly hungry to do that thing that we set out to do.
And Kwesi, I remember after the draft, you'd mentioned, I've got my son's Nerf hoop I got to set up. I don't spend time reflecting too much right away. But now that you've had a month since the draft, how do you reflect on this offseason and in general, how it fits into the kind of 4 off seasons that you've now had? And how do you feel your team's done?
Yeah, I think it was just kind of the last iteration of a plan that we kind of set in motion when we first got here. I love where the team's at. I think you think about a team like a portfolio of people, personalities, different things like that. And I just love where we're at. I love the kind of the chemistry that's being combined right now with the human aspect of it. Got a lot of players who love football, who fit the systems that Kevin and Flo want to run. And then they vibe. They like being around each other. It's a great work environment. Those aren't things that I necessarily could have calculated on an Excel spreadsheet, but it's cool to see it up close. And then, from a roster building standpoint, just like the balance of this team, the veterans in key spots. You got young players in key spots. You got young players behind them trying to push those veterans in front of them, who will be great depth pieces for us. We got a lot of players that we see arrow up to, and just have a lot of buy-in in this building. So it's been a process, obviously, to get us to this point, but we love where we're at. We've won a lot of games our first 3 years, and we want to continue to be this competitive. We love this group. We're excited about this season.
As you look at how you've grown in this job since taking it in 22, as you just kind of look back at these 3 years, where do you feel like you've developed the most as a general manager?
It's almost like parenthood. The doctor puts the baby in your hand and you're a parent, and you can say you're ready, but there's just some stuff that happens that you maybe weren't ready for, and you just lean on the resilience and all the things you've done in your life that have gotten you to that point. I think the general manager job is no different. You grow into the job. A lot of things I could talk about in an interview setting or in your little book, but you have to actually go and do it. You have to build buy-in and consensus. Those are the things I'd probably say I've grown the most in. Just, I think I've always had a good ear for people to listen to them and make them feel heard and validated. But then it's that next step of, okay, well, guys, here's how we connect all this. Here's how we go in this direction together. And do it in a way that's kind of understanding, but also discerning and kind of direct. Just Kevin and I's ability to kind of lead together in that way. I think that's probably the thing that I've grown the most at the job. There are times where, as a leader, they're looking for you, to make that decision that
Mhm.
maybe it's 50-50 and maybe those things aren't clear. That's that time where you want to. And somebody like me always wants to make sure that people know that they've been heard, that I am open-minded. But open-minded doesn't mean, hey, there aren't times where it's time to break this tie. Here's why, guy, let's go. So I think those are moments that you just kind of grow into in the job that I've kind of felt.
And along those lines, what have been the most challenging parts of the job since you took it? I mean, are there things that you just didn't see coming until you got into this seat?
I was prepared really well for the job by Andrew Berry. I almost, he'd call me into his office and say, hey, you never guess what I'm dealing with right now. The job of general manager, we have a text chain that's, another friend of ours is on it. I'm not going to name him, but it's called, Are You Sure You Want This Life? It would be just different things that people have no idea that general managers have to deal with. So I was pretty prepared for that. But again, until you're the person actually dealing with it after, a game, after all these things, it's actually just, it's incredibly challenging. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I love that about that. I love a challenge. I will look back on this time as this amazing opportunity I got to see how far I can push my limits, to see how hard I can work, see how positive I can be through any adversity that's thrown at us. There is just, you're managing people. I think the general manager title, I think people need to appreciate. I'm not sitting here playing fantasy football. Those are probably things I would do for free, to be honest. What you have to do is really galvanize a group of people, try and take in all the things they want in their lives and try and help them achieve what they want to achieve. Along those same lines, knowing that everybody wants those same things, and there's only so many people that can be in certain positions. And when your door opens, other people's worries and issues come through it.
Sure.
And that's my job. Maybe it's good to be an empath like I am, but also I wear those things. And so kind of wearing those things on the day, but also being able to go home and still be an engaged husband, be an exciting father, be a great coworker, son, brother, all those different things. I think it's just, it's been a challenge, a growth area. And every day I wake up knowing that I probably wasn't great the day before, but I'm going to be great +1 the next day and then great +2 the day after that. That's kind of the mindset you adapt in this job. And that's been really cool to be a part of.
It feels like with your contract extension now being inked and obviously KO being extended, all of that this organization is really moving from a setting the foundation type of phase into kind of the next phase of what you guys can be. And Harrison Phillips talked earlier this week about how in end of season meetings last year, there's this message of bringing in like-minded people and people who know what success looks like. And I'm curious, having this group in the facility for about a month now, a little over a month, like where have you seen this spring, these OTAs kind of be different from the ones you've seen in past years?
I think Kevin's had great attendance since he's been here. I think that's just from his players. I think that's a tribute, great. He deserves a lot of great credit for just the environment he's created for that reason. But I will say the attendance, has been just an amazing thing. And not just guys aren't showing up to check the box. They're showing up because they think that what we're doing this year is going to matter when it really matters the most towards the end of the season. So I would say it's just the standard that's been here since day one. We're talking April, May, June, those types of times of the year where you wouldn't necessarily think to see the standard, but the standard is there. Or maybe somebody's not lined up right. And guys are, come on, you're better than this, get this right. That type of dynamic. I think we've always had that here, but it feels a little bit more heightened. I do think that's, from what you said, Emily, just kind of adding more like-minded people, like-spirited people to the group that have kind of pushed that standard to another level.
I think it was after the draft. I think you talked a little bit about, I think the 22-page manifesto, I think when we talked after the draft when that came up. And I remember you talked about one of the things in there was having a team that can win multiple styles of fights. Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? How much of that was driven by experience in the last couple of years versus just a discussion with Kevin about what kind of team you wanted to have?
Yeah, I would say it's honestly, some of it came from just my time as a fan, before I ever got into the NFL and just thinking about teams and what wins in the NFL, and just you watch games as a fan, and look, some games will be 13-10, some games will be 42-34, and in a sport like football, you don't necessarily know which game is going to show up before you get there, and it's a one-shot game. There's no 7-game series. You don't get a chance to go back and make adjustments and do X, Y, Z. You've got to show up that game, and no matter what circumstances that the day has for you, you've got to overcome them to win a championship. I mean, that's what's so impressive about organizations that have been able to sustain success, the 49ers back in the day and the Patriots, obviously, in the more modern era. The fact that every game that they showed up, it wasn't always perfect. What type of game that they had to play, but they consistently were on the right side of the docket. And so we want to build our team that way. And then obviously Kevin, with his experience, having won with the Rams, and look at that team, how he talks about all the time how they didn't win a game for a month, how they showed up to the playoffs and, play different styles. They had a game that was a shootout. They had a game that was more of a defensive focused type of game where Matthew Stafford drives them down at the end of the game to win, to win at the end. So that's just what it takes to win in this sport. And so we want to, and I think a lot of times people speak about football in this binary way, in this way of knowing. We don't ultimately know, anything with certainty. We have players, we have plans, but we want to prepare ourselves for different scenarios that can happen. Hey, if we're able to run the ball, how does that impact this? How does that impact this other thing? And how do those things all work together? That's the beauty of football. It's this interrelated, beautiful organism. And Kevin is unbelievably great in his thought process in that regards, and that's why we're a great team together.
And Kwesi, you guys have obviously been very applauding how the Wilfs have supported you and Kevin and what you're trying to set out to do. And obviously this offseason, you guys spent a lot of money on free agents. And at least according to third-party accounting, it would seem no other NFL team is spending more cash on players this year. I mean, how much of that was part of the vision you set out for this offseason? And then does that come with any kind of inherent pressure for this 2025 team?
That was this was a part of the plan the whole time, just knowing that we would have these resources, kind of maybe moving on from that first core that we inherited and kind of came to this place here. Pressure, obviously I'm not one of the players on the field, but we brought in a lot of players that they wake up every day, try to be the best version of yourself. So when you approach every day that way, I don't feel like you look too far in front of your face. Pressure is almost focusing too much on the finish line. And I don't feel like this group is that way. I think the pressure is, but we put on ourselves to be the best version of ourselves every day, June 3rd, June 4th, June 5th. And that's not really hard pressure. To me, that's like a fun pressure. And these guys embody it in the best mindset. But again, we don't hide our ambition. That's not something we do in this building. We are trying to be one of the last teams standing. Every team should embrace that. Every team should wake up this time of year and say that that's where they want to be. Otherwise, why are we doing this? And so we're excited. We run towards that smoke, as you will. And I'm just so proud to be a part of this team, these guys, because I'll run behind these guys anytime.
Obviously, JJ McCarthy is a big part of this outlook for 2025 and this team and beyond into further years down the road for you guys. I guess, how have you gone about projecting McCarthy's NFL debut and what he can do based on his small college sample and obviously the small sample of what you saw last year?
Yeah, it's your point. It's a lot of projection, but it is it's projection with other things that might be a little bit more known. So we think about the team around him, right? So how do we support JJ? We provide a really good offensive line in front of him to protect the passer, also be able to run the football and set our whole offense up and down distances that make it easier on him and make it easier on any quarterback, to be frank. But with JJ, the bet has always been the talent and the football makeup, right? The football makeup to me is the gap. Anything that you think he can do and hasn't shown, to me, the football character is what gives you belief to take that jump. That's the jump that we're willing to take in this organization, just because from the draft process, really knowing the kid. I was actually texting with his college coach this morning, just checking in on him and just our mutual appreciation for the person. There's a reason he's checking in on him, because he just believes so much in him and loved the time that he got to share with him. And we're the same way in this building. So we're, the gap between, what he's been able to show just because it's been small sample and what's to come is our belief in the football makeup. He's going to go home just like Kevin, just like myself, just like the leaders in this organization, and give every single thing he can to the accomplishment of our goals. And I can sleep at night with that, right? That's how I talk about minimize regret all the time. I'm never going to regret going into battle with people like that. I think we're going to accomplish our goals, and that's the positive mindset I have. But otherwise, I'm glad that I got to go into battle with people like that.
If you think back to that day last August where you guys find out that the knee is a problem and you go in and you do all the tests and you find out it's a meniscus, before that, where was he at in terms of the trajectory he was on and how much had your expectations changed or, maybe progressed as a result of what he had done in training camp and some of the joint practices or the projection for the joint practices at that point?
I think it'd be hard for me to talk about that just alone because, when you have a QB PhD or QB Nobel laureate in your building, you lean on him often. And so we have just constant dialogue and conversations about what we wanted for JJ that year. And he started exceeding them pretty quickly. We were pretty clear, I think, publicly that we didn't want him to play.
Yeah.
Not because he wouldn't have, how we would have played, but we just thought for the life, for the kind of the better success of his career, it's better to sit and watch. And so he was pushing a little bit in terms of maybe even becoming the backup or different things like that. But just the day over day growth that he would show, he's so coachable. You give him a coaching point, he's going to go home and make sure that coaching point is received. And then you really saw the arm talent and different things like that he gave, ability to move in the pocket and different things like that. He was on the come. We were excited about it. Again, he had that great first preseason game, and it's the preseason, so you don't want to read too much into it. But if people remember, the Raiders played their first team defense for while he was in the game. So you did get a little bit of a glimpse to see him against regular season NFL type players. We just loved it. And not only just the play, but how he played. He threw the interception, if people remember.
Yep.
And when you talk to the coaches, there was just a positivity and a joy that he played with, that he was going to come back, and he had that great, recovery. Those are moments that matter. Not necessarily that he completed the passes, that he didn't go in the tank. He came over the sideline, got his coaching point, took it, and then went out there and played with his teammates. So that was an exciting time for us. And what was so amazing about the injury was how he handled it, the maturity which he handled it. Obviously a disappointing thing, but I remember him saying, well, hey, this will give Sam, just the platform that he needs. And obviously Sam went on to have the year that he had. So the maturity that he showed at the original point, these guys amaze me all the time. They do things physically that obviously people like us can only dream of, but they also do things like that are pretty incredible.
Kwesi, one more thing on JJ. Are there very many comparable situations when you look out for 22-year-old starters making the NFL debut, coming into a team that wants to win? I mean, it reminded me of San Francisco coming to town a few years ago with Trey Lance. They felt like they had that team. How much time did you spend looking for just comps of what you're putting this kid into?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that there's a great comp for this. I think Trey Lance, I'd probably, if we were on camera, I'd say differences between the situations. But I will say this, a lot of the bet we've made, I've talked a lot about JJ the person, but let me talk a little bit about what's in this building. I think we have maybe the best QB incubator in the NFL. And so when you put a person in there in the QB incubator with all that ability and all that mindset, I just feel so confident about what's going to come out the other end. And I think the proof's been in what Kevin, Wes, Josh, their whole staff's been able to do to this point already. And then you add somebody like JJ with his ability and his mindset and his approach. Just ultimately in this job, you have to make bets. You have to be willing to believe something before other people see it. And so that's a lot of what gives me confidence. I wish there was a more cleaner comp to kind of give me that extra confidence, but I'm just it's the belief I have in this building. It's the belief I have in this player.
We have a couple broader kind of league-wide topics that we were curious to pick your brain about, starting with obviously 2028 Olympics and flag football. And you guys were part of that announcement a little bit last week or a couple weeks ago when league meetings were in Egan. What's your perspective on NFL players playing? Would you want your guys playing in the Olympics?
Oh man, that is a question I don't want to answer. No, it's look, the growth of the game has been so cool, and I know the NFL, they do such a great job internationally, and I think obviously this will be the next step. And you've seen the growth in female flag football, which has been awesome for the game. And so I am in no way poo-pooing all of those positive things, but obviously in my job, just like when internationals go from soccer to their club team, they're just you are going to be focused on your own risks. And hey, is that player from that country who gets 1 minute to go against Justin Jefferson, is he really going to take care of Justin Jefferson the way I need him to take care of Justin Jefferson? Those are things that obviously go through my head, and those will be conversations we have with the player, with the league at larger levels. But excited for what it's going to mean for the game. And one of our players, Brian Asamoah, obviously, who is leading Team Ghana, which I'm so proud of him for that, and excited to root for both the U.S. and Ghana. I'm looking forward to that. But obviously as a GM, it's a little complicated.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Brian and just how special those efforts are and seeing him get involved in Ghana flag football.
It's you always want to give back to where you're from or different causes and things like that. And these guys, they have such time commitments placed on them from so many areas of their life to sign up to do something like that and then do it to the level he's done it. And I'm loosely advising just the care that he puts into everything that he's doing for that team. It's just, again, these guys amaze you all the time with what they do on and off the field, and just proud of him. Again, it'll be fun. I hope I get to LA to see it. I think it'll be an exciting time.
You mentioned the international stuff, Kwesi, and it comes at a time where you guys are making a little bit of history. You're the first team to go do back-to-back international games in different countries this fall. When the NFL came to you guys with that, what was your first reaction to that? How did that come about that you went from them pitching that to, okay, let's do it?
Do you want the clean version or the no? I'm
typically a family show, but just for you, if there's another version, we can do the E-rating. We're fine.
I think there's resiliency built up in this organization. Kevin, myself, Rob, I remember we were sitting in the office when the idea got broached. And what's great about Kev is there was no complaints. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey, let's think about this thoughtfully. What are the positives of it? We don't get to do training camps like in Mankato anymore. And we kind of thought of it as, hey, this is maybe a time to get away and early in the season to get guys a chance to bond and grow together as a team. So we looked at that positive. Obviously, knowing London, we played in London a couple times already, and knowing how short the flight from Dublin is, we talked about the logistics. We obviously looped in Tyler Williams and all our great people here in football operations to get us. And once it came to the fact that we thought we can handle it, and again, that's from a resilient mindset group that chooses to look at things positively. We thought we could it would be something that we could do for the league, knowing how important it is for them to grow the game internationally and how great our fan base is. That's the other thing. We know how our fan base is going to travel. And so knowing that, hey, maybe we get a couple games that might have come in December in Cleveland. I know that stadium pretty well, or in Pittsburgh. Now we get a couple games internationally where our amazing fan base will show up and show out for us.
And Kwesi, this is just a quick offbeat one before we have to let you go, but we've heard how much you incorporate music into your role as GM, whether it's the morning songs or asking players or job candidates about their favorites. I mean, why is that, and how has that grown over time?
I think a lot of times interviews really, what are you really learning, right? You ask all these, I used to go to consulting interviews or banking interviews and they're asking you brain teasers. And it's like, is the job really a brain teaser? I think I'm going to have more than 5 minutes to figure out whatever, random question you're asking me. So I try and spend interviews, obviously there's a little bit of where you try to get a technical sense, but I just want to know the person. Mm-hmm. I want to know what it's going to be like to sit next to the person for a lot of hours and try and do this job at a high level. And when you talk about music is a really emotional thing. I think you get to, especially a lot of times, where I'm going to be talking to men where I don't know that I'm necessarily great at picking away at people's, core, but music's a cool way of kind of getting to that. And I love the answers that we've got. I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. And I've just learned so much about people. And it's such a great thing that connects people over, because I get players who were in the draft cycle maybe 2 years ago who'll come running up to me, Kwesi, you remember we talked, you remember my song? And it's like, actually, I don't, because I ask that question a lot. So I can't remember everybody's song, but it is just a really great way. And you learn very quickly what things people value in their life, what things are foundational to them character-wise. Is it hard work? Is it their path? Is it, staying close to the people they're connected with? Is it joy? Is it, it's just a really great way of learning about people in a way that, frankly, agents can't really necessarily prepare them for. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. I'm not looking for anything particular. I'm just looking for how you communicate it.
Was there an answer that's really blown you away from someone?
There's some amazing song choices, because, obviously I'm in the draft process. I'm dealing with guys who are half my age, and, I got one guy brought up like a Mobb Deep song, and I was like, how do you know Mobb Deep? Stuff like that.
Yes.
Where you're just like, there's been some guys who actually make their own music. So that's been really cool to they'll talk about their music and really get in depth and the why behind them. And again, in that 15 minutes, I feel like I know that person. I know a lot about that person. So those have been some amazing dynamics, and we do it in our staff as well. It's a great way in 5 minutes to really learn somebody and know and build some quick thing. Hey, okay, he likes country. I like country. I'm going to go talk to him about country, and maybe we'll become friends. But it's just been a really cool thing. I'm really happy that it's taken the hold the way it has.
You got a halftime show pitch for the Netflix Christmas Eve or Christmas Day game?
Beyonce
was Houston.
Man, those are people that get paid a lot of money to put on great shows. Obviously when that got announced, everybody in your life, it's like, does that mean Beyonce's coming? And I don't know the answer to that question. I know it's going to be a great show. We'll be ready for it. But the league has been fortunate enough to put us in positions to be in a lot of games, prime time. So we're just going to get out here and work and make sure we're up to the task.
My idea is Janet Jackson, because she recorded most of her formative albums in Minneapolis. It ties to the local stuff.
Did she? Well, yeah. What was that? Is connection to?
Well, the Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis were in Morris Day in the Time, so the Flight Time Studios that she did Control and Rhythm Nation and Janet were all done in Minneapolis. So that's my idea. If you and Roger get a chance to talk, if you like it, pass that one along.
I don't want the viewers to think that me and Roger are to be talked that much. I don't think Roger's necessarily going to consult me on that. Love Roger. I don't think he's consulting me on that type of thing.
Well, Kwesi, thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. That's all we have today for everyone listening. We'll be back next week during Vikings minicamp to talk more ball and what we see out there. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of our work on StarTribune.com. And thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.